Good morning, everyone. I'm Marios Skiadas from Expertise France, and today I'm going to present to you an effort of the Greek administration to coordinate and promote the PM² methodology across the public sector. We call it the Greek Open PM² Hub. This effort is being run for a few years under the reference framework of technical support provided by European Commission, more specifically by the Structural Reform Support Service, which is now an entity called DG Reform. DG Reform provides tailor-made expertise, technical support to various member states in several domain policies, and focuses on practical aspects of reforms, be it strategic or legal advice, several studies, training, and of course, in-country missions by experts. Within this framework, the current program is supporting almost 500 technical support projects in 25 countries with a budget of 200 million and focuses on several areas of support, one of which is the government and public administration, which is where we are also involved. This expertise is provided by several organizations that have the ability to do so. One of them is Expertise France, an organization under the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Economy and Finance, which assists, advises, and trains national or local authorities in designing and implementing reforms. The organization currently, 2019, was running about 500 projects worth of 250 million all across the globe. You can see here that 11% is focused in Europe, with Greece being a central part. Let me give you a brief history of the project. The first one started in 2016-2017. The main beneficiary was the Ministry of Administrative Reconstruction, which was a ministry competent in providing support both in the information technology and in the public administration. It had e-government strategy under its responsibility, and then that was transferred to a newly formed Secretariat General for Digital Policy, and the project had a separate component on national digital strategy. On 2017, we switched to this beneficiary. We started working with them. And in 2019, the transition was completed. The beneficiary is a separate ministry called Ministry of Digital Governance, which is responsible for providing the overall strategy on digital transformation of the country. Currently, we are running a project called Support Public Administration in Digital Transformation, and there are two actual pillars. One of them is the e-government component, and the other one is the ICT component. You can see several involvements of the project in the sectors of the economy, but let's see where our focus lies. Our focus lies in this component, which is called Digital and Administrative Transformation of Public Administration, and more specifically, the outcome is called Accelerate Implementation of e-government portfolio. What that means is that the government is designing a set of projects, large projects and smaller projects, which would be the catalyst to drive the digital transformation across many sectors of the economy. Several horizontal activities are involved in this technical support project. I have highlighted two that are directly relevant to our space today. The first one is the agile procurement methodology and templates, and the second one is to assess and recommend on ICT project management methodologies and the adoption of the Open PM². This was our assignment 2 years ago. Work under technical support is participatory. It involves the administration and its members. We utilize best practices, of course, around the EU. We are aligned with both national policies and EU policies. There is significant stakeholder engagement in the projects, and we work with working groups. So by itself, the technical support is almost like a portfolio of mini projects running under the same umbrella. What we did when we originally had the mandate to see how project management methodology could be introduced in the public sector it was not something new, of course. Several attempts have been made around the government. Several organizations running IT projects used to have a methodology, but not a uniform one. And the National Digital Strategy published in 2017 identified lack of a proper project management methodology for ICT projects as one of the key factors impeding successful results of the project. So many projects failed or did not deliver as designed, and the lack of a formal project management methodology was identified as one of the causes. And it called for the introduction of a new one. So this was our mandate. What we did is that we would do a literature review to see what is a landscape report, what is going on the field, to read methodologies and documentations from existing project management methodologies that we knew were either in place or were used by other member states, and of course to see exactly the current situation from the organizations that were heavily involved in running ICT projects of the public sector. We would then come with a set of selection criteria to see how would we decide on our recommendations. Please take into consideration that we do not decide, of course. We recommend to the administration the next steps and what to do. We would do a short evaluation, and then we would produce a draft implementation plan. This started in 2018. The landscape. We did some literature review. There were not many information available. The majority of the Greek public organizations did not implement a modern project management methodology. And when I mean public organizations that are running ICT projects, it's focused on ICT. Okay, so the most usual methodology was something that we call a process for getting funding from European and structural investment funds. So this is a ministerial decree which has a set of processes that resembles a methodology for running projects. Another interesting study we found identified that 22% of organizations are not capable of managing projects, and even a larger percentage, depending on the criteria applied, is not using modern or efficient project management practices. This was not news. It's something that has been previously identified, but confirmed also with the studies. Our study also produced some, again, interesting revelations. The identity of the survey is we sent our questionnaire to 18 ministries and 12 public bodies, again, bodies that are running large ICT projects. We had, from the answers, we covered about 370 projects of a total budget of 600 million euros. The total number of reported project managers was 213, of which 70 were full-time project managers, and only 28 certified project managers were revealed. Let's see this survey in a bit more detail. These were the questions posed. So, how many number of e-government and IT projects have you been running for the past 5 years? Why 5 years? Because in Greece, the multitude, the bulk of ICT projects is more often than not framed by the European structural funds. So the funds are mainly from SIF and not national funds. This means that we have to coincide with these cycles of funding that come almost every 6 years. What is your forecast for the next 5 years? How many persons are managing these projects within your organization? And what percentage of these are full-time project managers? Do you use a recognized project management methodology when running these projects? And to what degree is it followed? Is it a formal methodology? Are you complying with it? To what degree? Do you use internal methods and tools? Or are you relying on the formal methodology ones? And have you had any formal project management training? And have you got any certified project managers within the personnel you are using to run those projects? A simple set of questions, a quick survey just to identify the landscape in the major stakeholders. What did we find? We see that only 13% of project managers have been certified on a methodology. This is a quite low percentage, I think. We are talking about ICT projects that amount to almost €1 billion nationwide. 18% of project managers are employed by central government, by ministries. The rest are in local government or in other large organizations running IT projects. Only 1/3 of them have a full-time project management job description. So what this means is that we have persons working, doing their normal job, and on top of that, they are assigned to run a project within their organization. So it could be the procurement manager, it could be the IT staff, it could be anyone who is assigned a project outside its normal, let's say, duties. Some interesting number, you can see that there is one project manager per 1.5 projects and one project manager for every €2.5 million of project budget. We have a significant deviation from this rule. A company called Information Society, which is responsible for running most IT projects in the public sector, has one project manager per 4 projects because it has a lot of projects and few personnel, and one PM for every 10 million project budget. Again, 2 of the large organizations like Ministry of Justice and the General Secretariat of Information System have one project manager for every €5 million project budget. Apart from the fact that only 13% of PMs, of government follows an international methodology, 65% have adopted an internal PM methodology. So we have 65% of the organizations claiming that they do apply some sort of methodology, which is called internal. And these are mostly derived, again, from the procedures of the national, of the ESIF structural funds requirements, as I told you before. This is an outlook of certified project managers percent as a ratio to the total project managers per organization. So you can see some interesting facts here. This is the National Authority for Public Revenue. You can see that they have a small percentage of PMs certified, as opposed, for example, to GRNet, which is a national service for research and technology. But as a whole, you get the idea, the ratio is quite small. Again, this is an interesting slide. Number of projects per number of project managers. See what I told you before. Here, Information Society, it has a lot of projects with few project managers. There are organizations that have more project managers than projects. So again, we can see that the resource management is not uniform across the government. What were our conclusions regarding this landscape? Most of the public organizations have a quite sufficient number of PMs for future projects. However, most of them are not certified and are doing other things, many other things besides running and managing these projects. There are, of course, exceptions, which are located in organizations that have a very distinct role and responsibility in running ICT projects and have specific budgets to do that. We identified very few capacity building activities and training courses in the public sector. And of course, we identified a low degree of compliance to formal methods and tools. So even though we had persons responding to a survey claiming that they follow a formal methodology, if someone was to audit, let's say, the compliance, we would find low degree of compliance according to the responses we received. So how would we go about selecting the methodology? First of all, let's see the criteria. After a lot of discussions with the various stakeholders, we said that the most important criteria were the following. The methodology should be easy to use and understand. As we saw, most public sector employees are doing something else. They're not trained project managers. They need to be able to understand and use easily the tools and the methodology by itself. Okay, so for example, you need comprehensive documentation, not large chunks of books and diagrams, but something concise and understandable. You need online availability of the material, easy to find and have a reference. and you need a very specific governance model. Who is doing what? The second important criterion was the tailoring and the scalability. So we need a flexible methodology, not a very rigid one. It's very hard to be compliant to a very strict rule set and strict processes. We need the flexibility. We need to be able to tailor and customize the methodology according to the needs of the public sector, which are very different from the private sector. Okay. And for example, you need low effort in doing that. You can't spend a year tailoring the methodology to run a project for another year. Okay. And of course, you need a methodology that is suitable for information and communication technologies. Another important criteria for the public sector is the total cost of ownership. What do we mean by that? Training costs, certification costs, implementation costs. So you need to keep it as low as possible, as you know, in the public sector. And the final criterion was, is it easy to implement? Okay, we understood it, we customized it, it's cheap. Can we implement it easily? Can we adapt it to the different cultures across the various organizations? Can we adapt it to the various mindsets in the public sector? Is it suitable for the various level of project managers, for a senior project manager, for a junior project manager? Is it, does it entail a heavy or a low administrative burden? Do we need a lot of paperwork? You know, people react to this. Is it close to the contract management concept that rules the public sector project management? Everything is circled around contracts. After comparing the three most known and usual methodologies like PRINCE and PMI, etc., we came with a recommendation for the PM² methodology. So why? What were the main reasons for this selection? First of all, it has a governance model. This governance model for the public sector is a big plus. You cannot do without it. It simply was one of the top three winning factors. It is easily tailored for the public sector, perhaps because it stemmed from the public sector. It originated within the European Commission, as you all know. It is very well customizable for ICT projects, even modern techniques like agile implementation. It had a very low cost to introduce and maintain, based, of course, on comparing to other methodologies' cost. It was not very complex to use and provided adequate methods and tools. It has a small footprint, so it's not very popular yet, but it has a trend. It is going to be more popular the next few years. So we suggested, let's go ahead and try it. Let's see how that fares. That was a recommendation we provided the Ministry of Digital Governance, who will be the owner. So what did we actually propose? First of all, please fit it for the purpose you want to use it. It's not copy what someone else has done and paste it in the Greek reality. It might not be the best methodology to address everything, but you have to make sure that it is the right one to address the specific peculiarities of the Greek public sector and the specific issues of Greek ICT project management. So build your mindset around it and tailor it to fit your purpose. Second main recommendation, it needs to be centrally supported, high-level support. You cannot deploy a methodology based on one organization or two. You need to have it centrally supported. So what we did, we identified the Ministry of Digital Governance as a key player for adoption, and we presented the methodology to them, provided also some training material. So we need to make sure that the head of the administration is on board and it has a vested interest in seeing the methodology deploy. Third, don't do it all at once. Have a step-by-step approach to deploy the methodology. In order to ensure a smooth penetration, we need to target first the organizations that are running more projects, more important projects perhaps, and then spread it across the public sector according to the needs, but focus on few organizations first and then deploy it. And the million-dollar question was, should it be compulsory? This was asked by the administration. We thought, no, it should not be compulsory because it wouldn't achieve anything in the beginning. It is not a mature environment to start working immediately with, let's say, a ministerial decree enforcing everyone to run by these rules. So first establish some guidelines, establish a mechanism to support those that are interested, and create a mature operating environment. Try it, learn, and then enforce it. That was our suggestion. The main vehicle for this would be what we call the Greek Open PM² Hub. So what is this hub? It is a network, of course, of persons and organizations that would be the champions to promote the methodology across the public sector. How did we conceptualize it? Well, first of all, there should be a responsible unit within the main stakeholder, the Ministry of Digital Governance. This would be the core of the hub, would need to coordinate with various public organizations, ministries, and other stakeholders running ICT projects, and be actually the support network. But where do we find the competent people? How do we build capacity? We then tried and looked forward to coordinating with EU institutions. When the PM² methodology was implemented in DIGIT, there was something called the Center of Excellence for Project Management. This unfortunately did not go as far as we would hope. So we could not establish this formal link here, but we were fortunate enough to have the alliance, the PM² Alliance, and we thank them for that. We had their support through the outset of the project, and this is a very good example of an organization that could be a catalyst to training and deploying and supporting the implementation of PM². So, coordination by the Ministry of Digital Governance, the PM unit. The Greek Hub will be an expanded PM unit. The core is at the ministry, but the network is comprised of other organizations, representatives from other organizations that have high-skilled PMs under their personnel. It will undertake the role of a task force, a specific task force that would assist project managers in ministries and later on in other institutions to deploy and maintain the PM². They would be responsible for monitoring, for developing, for supporting, and for assessing. Participation from several key ministries and public organizations was mandatory, otherwise it would be a failed effort. And of course, the PMs of the Greek Hub should participate on a voluntary basis. It is an open methodology after all. What we said the ministry should do? What was the to-do plan? First of all, create a PM² deployment plan and support the preparation activities required to start actions. Secondly, to capture and monitor the demand for PM² trained PMs based on the public sector needs. As I told you before, there were very few certified PMs in general. So you can imagine that the PM² certifications are very rare. Establish communication with public organizations to promote and support the adoption process. So who do we call? Information Society, IDICA, there are many organizations running ICT projects in the Greek public sectors, and more of them are now under the umbrella of the Ministry of Digital Governance, are consolidated, which is a very good opportunity. And of course, monitor the execution of the PM2 deployment plan regularly to see how it goes. Do we have results? Do we need to steer our attention somewhere? So what was the plan? First of all, propose a governance scheme. I have a color code here. Blue means that this action has started, it has already produced some results. Green is that this is ended, and black or gray is that we are yet to start or we are in the very early stages. So propose a governance scheme. This is the hub. Okay, we have proposed a very concrete governance scheme. It has been submitted to the Ministry of Digital Governance, processed by the responsible persons, and is currently under development. First of all, identify and empower a core team, the champions. We were lucky enough to present the concept in a conference, and we had several volunteers from around the Greek public sector, and most of, if not all of the key organizations were represented and intended to support this endeavor. Select a pilot organization or a set of projects. This was also part of another technical support project. The pilot organization was selected. The project has been concluded last July, and the results are being currently processed. Prepare a training course for the National Training Center. Again, this was done and it helped a lot. This, of course, needs more work and needs to be further deployed, but the first steps have been already done. And in the panel this afternoon, we will discuss some of the results of this endeavor with Ms. Dramalioti, who is responsible for that. Then organize PM2 trainings. So in the key organizations, let's train some people. Let's train the project managers who will run the project these years. I think we have almost met the target of 100 persons. In the Ministry of Digital Governance alone, there was a set of training for about 20 persons. I know that there were other also endeavors in GSIS, in there. So I think we're slowly reaching this target. And then, of course, assess the results of the pilot project, which this perhaps should be a blue line rather than a black, but the results are not yet processed, but they are underway. So we'll have our first impression of how did it go, perhaps by the end of the year. Second phase, propose a service list for the hub. What will the hub do? What services will it offer to whom? How? So this blueprint is something that needs to be done rather quickly in order for the major stakeholders, the decision makers, to understand what the hub will do and to support its implementation. Second, start tailoring the methods and tools of the methodology to meet the actual demands of the Greek public sector. This again has started. There has been another project running to create some artifacts to link with the public procurement processes. And this is a very interesting endeavor. And the other link we are trying to establish is with what is called the Observatory for the Digital Transformation Strategy. So we try to link some processes and artifacts of the PM² methodology to the way we will monitor the effectiveness of the digital strategy, the national digital strategy. Then we need to adjust the operational model based on pilot results. This is, of course, a next step. Organize awareness activities and training programs, such as my speech here. Provide tools to the community. This is very important. So rather than being there and saying, here we are, and we will provide something for you, it's much better to build something and give them from day one, support people from day one with useful tools and methods. And of course, establish a formal support network. Who are the participants of the hub? In what way are they bound to this idea? And finalize the proposed governance model. The main stakeholders, of course, is the Ministry of Digital Governance, other ministries and organizations, and also the National Training Center. What has been done so far? The Greek Hub has been officially announced by representatives of the Ministry of Digital Governance, as I told you before. We have delivered training courses and certification motivation to key organizations through the work of DigiReform, through the technical support projects, and we will continue to do that. We have ensured the compatibility of the methodology with the new version of the National Digital Strategy, which is called the Digital Transformation Book. We inform the minister and deputy ministers and all the writers of this strategy, and we made sure that the methodology is compatible. We created some specific trainings, and I have to say that the course on portfolio management and on agile PM² were extremely welcome in the personnel of the Ministry of Digital Governance. By its nature, the ministry is not so much interested in running a specific or 2 or 3 project. It is much more interested in making sure that the project portfolio is going as planned, it gives the results and the outcomes it has promised. So portfolio management and agile is very, very well received. There is, of course, a lot of work outside the technical support projects. There are artifacts being created. It has been or it's being translated into the Greek language. There are open software tools that are being, again, tailored by ELAC to fit the PM² methodology. some awareness events, the pilot project. So it's not only through the technical support that the PM² is being promoted, but there is a small ecosystem being built in order to deploy it. More importantly, the presidential decree of 2020 establishes a digital strategy department within the Ministry of Digital Governance, which, among others, has the responsibility to raise awareness and to deploy best practices in ICT project management, such as PM². PM² is mentioned in the presidential decree, so it's something that is adopted officially. We have managed to have a high level, a high degree of support from the administration, and this is a key factor for success. Also, we have established collaboration with the National Training Center, the center who is responsible to provide training to all public sector employees, and which would be the core to train the trainers, to create the champions, to formally create the champions. We will then deploy the methodology and its tools to their organizations. More on that on the afternoon panel. And the pilot project in General Secretariat of Information Systems has been concluded and will trigger a new mini project that we will run within the context of this technical support project by Expertise France. So what are we going to do next? We will start the hub, the concept of the hub on December 2020. We plan to establish the core. We think that it should be around 10 persons from various organizations. This is our initial approach. We're not yet sure, but we think it's a good number. We will create and send an open invitation to stakeholders to provide ideas, consultation, recommendations, and of course, voluntary work to set up the hub. The main deliverable of this mini project within this technical support program is to draft the blueprint. So what I told you before, how it is organized, who participates, under which regime, what is the service list, how much will it cost, and what would be a concrete action plan for the next, let's say, 6 to 12 months. Then we need to do a maturation study, a feasibility study, to see how much will it cost, is it viable, what would it take to set up and operate the hub, and of course continue the deployment plan for the next few years. Last but not least, monitor and assess. And this is again where we will, of course, seek support from other countries and from the Alliance. How do we monitor? How do we assess the results? How do we see if it is compliant? Where we need to change the methodology to evaluate it, to present a new concept for the hub. So this is the result of our efforts so far. The project is ongoing. It will end on April, but the new one we hope will come along. The hub does not need technical support to operate. I think it relied on it to kickstart it, to jumpstart it. And we expect to have more results in next year's conference, I hope. Thank you very much for your participation. Again, we have the panel today at 4 o'clock CET in the afternoon, where we will discuss similar experiences from other member states and at the EU level. Thank you very much. Don't hesitate to send questions, which will be answered through the application.